As many of you may know, DMX was one of the craziest and most interesting figures in hip-hop history. He went off the rails at an early age and repeatedly came into conflict with the law, which is why there are so many incredible stories about DMX. But today we're going to look at a story that perfectly illustrates how radical DMX was, even at a young age. At the age of just 15, he made a spectacular prison break and was on the run for almost a month. This story sounds so interesting that we're going to take a closer look at it today. Feel free to leave a like and a comment for the algorithm and enjoy the video. DMX had a very difficult life from the very beginning. He was born on December 18th, 1970 in Mount Vernon, New York, grew up in Yonkers, and experienced a great deal of violence and neglect at a young age. His father was absent at his birth, and his mother beat him daily, which is why he regularly ran away from home. The streets of Yonkers slowly became his home, and it was there that he found his first loyal companion, a young dog named Bugatty. Bugatty was a stray that DMX had stolen from a junkyard. The dog became his best friend and companion in an otherwise lonely and harsh world. At that time, he was only 14 years old and very thin, which meant that he was often not taken seriously on the streets. But that changed with his new dog, because Bugatty was a pit bull that everyone respected. So from then on, DMX used his dog to attack other people, and because of all his crimes, DMX racked up numerous charges. But an event at the age of 15, which DMX wrote about in his 2003 autobiography, changed his whole life. A guy named Peanut, who lived in DMX's neighborhood, used to bother DMX almost every day. So one day, DMX set his dog Bugatty on him and Bugatty chased Peanut away. But shortly after, Peanut's angry mom came running with a frying pan and started yelling, so DMX and his dog ran away. Peanut's mother called the police, who immediately set out to find DMX and his dog. When they found DMX and Bugatty in front of a block of flats, the police officers immediately drew their weapons and took cover. They ordered DMX to put Bugatty on a leash and get into the patrol car, which DMX did. Unfortunately, however, it turned out that the animal welfare authorities had to take Bugatty away. When DMX heard this, he completely lost it and shouted at his dog to get him back. Bugatty then rushed towards the police officers. After a brief struggle, one of the officers drew his weapon and shot Bugatty in front of DMX. The loss of his loyal companion plunged DMX into a deep crisis. He began taking more and more hard drugs. And just 1 week after his dog's death, he even went to his school with a sawed-off shotgun, which led to his arrest. It wasn't long before DMX was convicted and sent to prison for 2 years at the age of just 15. But even prison couldn't tame the wild DMX. In prison, DMX met his cellmate Bobby, a spoiled white boy from the north of the United States. Bobby had led a very different life from DMX and had no criminal past, but had been imprisoned for a few youthful indiscretions. Nevertheless, the two hit it off right away, became friends, and one evening decided to break out of prison together. They quickly came up with a plan, which they wanted to carry out the very next day. And on December 9th, 1986, the time had come. They put on all the clothes they had to protect themselves from the cold, smashed the window of their cell, and escaped from their cell block unnoticed. Now, only the guard stood between them and freedom. So Bobby knocked the guard down and both ran toward the prison fence. But the guard immediately sounded the alarm, and within seconds, the guard dogs were released. One of the dogs caught up with DMX as he was standing at the fence and bit his leg with lightning speed. Although DMX loved dogs more than anything, he had no choice but to kick the guard dog until it stopped moving. Then, DMX jumped over the fence that Bobby had already jumped over and was able to escape. Since the prison was miles away from the city, DMX and Bobby fought their way through the forest for 2 days until they finally reached Bobby's hometown. There, they wanted to find shelter with a friend of Bobby's and hid in the basement of her house. But Bobby left the basement a short time later to get money from his mother and never returned. Most likely, he was sent back to prison by his mother. But that was the last time DMX saw Bobby. The next morning, Bobby's friend came home and saw DMX lying hungry in her basement. so she made him food and allowed him to continue living in the basement, where DMX watched TV all day. He even celebrated his 16th birthday in the basement. But his dog bite wound became increasingly infected, so Bobby's girlfriend gave him money to go back to Yonkers and get help from his family. When DMX returned to Yonkers, he first went to his mother, who was anything but happy to see him, so he went to his grandparents, who took him in. His uncles, who were also criminals, even admired him for escaping prison, and DMX felt safe again for the first time. But on January 3rd, DMX was awakened by a loud bang on the door. It was the police, called by DMX's own mother, who believed that DMX finally had to take responsibility for his actions. He was arrested again, and due to the increased risk of him fleeing, DMX was transferred to a prison with very strict security measures, where he had to serve his entire sentence. According to DMX, his mother's betrayal was one of the worst events of his life, and he never forgave her for it. Unfortunately, his time in prison did not deter him, because when DMX was released from prison in 1988, he was arrested again a few weeks later. He was caught stealing a car, so he had to go straight back to prison. But there was one good thing that came out of it all, because during his time in prison, he fell more and more in love with hip-hop and started writing his first rap lyrics, which gave him a focus when he was released in 1989, namely rap music. He began to focus more and more on music and used it as an outlet for his emotions and, above all, his frustration, which has made him one of the most influential rappers in history to this day. Thanks to his rap career, he had little contact with the police for 10 years and was able to enjoy his life. Unfortunately, however, his demons caught up with him again at the end of the 1990s, and from the 2000s onwards, he was arrested at least once a year. It started in 1999 with possession of a weapon, animal cruelty, and driving without a license. In 2000, he was arrested again for driving without a license and possession, which led to DMX being sent back to prison in 2001, where he was charged again after throwing objects at a prison guard. And so it went on for years. Starting in the 2000s, DMX was arrested over 30 times, meaning he was in conflict with the law throughout his life, until he passed away in 2021. May he now rest in peace. If you enjoyed the video, please leave some love. A like or comment helps me greatly to keep the channel going. Stay healthy, and we will see you in the next video.